Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book from Informa Law. It's a fascinating book, a very important book in maritime law. It's the ISM Code, a practical guide to the legal and insurance implications of the code. It's part of the Lloyd's Practical Shipping Guides series. It's in a third edition and it's been written by Professor Phil Anderson. As I've indicated, it's part of this particular series, Lloyd's series. It's Informa Law from Routledge, which is the Taylor and Francis group. The book is available both as a hardback book, which we'll look at in a minute, and also as an ebook. Remember, ISM is International Safety Management. So it's a safety book primarily in terms of maritime law. We've given it a title. Elizabeth and I looked at this book and thought, well, let's explain a little bit about what it's about for those who are new to this subject. But what we've said is a superb overview and guidance on the ISM Code. Must-have purchase for shipping lawyers, and anybody who's involved in that will know about this book quite quickly. It's in a third edition now. Nice blue cover at the front. Looks like a bit of a trawler at the front there in the North Sea. Doesn't actually say what the picture is, it's just a cover picture. There's the spine and then there's the back. Just a little bit of information on the back. It's a hard cover. As you say, Lloyd's Practical Shipping Guides is listed there. We open it up. The book, it's 400 pages. There we go, you can see the index at the back. The index numbering is page numbering. There's a lot of bibliographical information, of course, which is extremely helpful. And then you've got right at the back what I did find helpful, again, a glossary of terms. This is done very much on the continental system, I think, now, of having the glossary at the back. The glossary of terms and abbreviations at the back rather than the front, which in some ways is quite helpful because there's quite a lot of abbreviation. And so what you've got is you've got a very detailed section at the back, which you can look at afterwards. You've got the paragraph numbering, which you can see, which is at the side. This is actually in the appendices. That's Appendix 2. That's the code itself. Appendix 1 is SOLAS, which is the International Convention on the Safety of Life at Sea, 1974 as amended. Those are the two appendices. Then you've got a conclusion, and again you've got the paragraph numbering you see at the sides there. You've got a few little figures, which are quite interesting there. Lots of tables, of course. Wouldn't be the same without it. You've got footnoting, which has things like the relevant case references, dates and so forth, where you can find specific case law. And if we go to the front of the book, there's the main. That is the actual shipping guides list there from Informa, and there is the actual detail of the front page. Then the contents section, you've got the detail there for the ebook and so forth. Then you've got all of the detail, the introduction, then the various chapter headings, and then there are 4 main chapters in total. Then there's a foreword from William A. O'Neill, Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, for the first edition in 1998. And then you've got the third edition, Koji Sekimizu, who's Secretary General now of the IMO, and he's written a foreword in October 2014. And there's a preface to the first edition, and then a preface to the second edition, and then after that a preface to the third edition, a new one, by Phil Anderson, who's in Northumberland. He's still there. September 2014 is when he wrote that. A lot of detail here. Then there are acknowledgements. A huge amount of work has gone into this. Table of cases, so forth. And then we get into and then there's some figures and tables there. Then you get into the work itself. Introduction and underlying principles. And then you kick off from there. This book is not, and it's not intended to be, a legal textbook for lawyers. The primary purpose of this book is to provide a wide range of lay individuals engaged in the shipping and maritime insurance industries, as well as flag administrators, etc., involved with ISM Code implementation or monitoring. That's basically what the book is about. It's an important work, and one that everybody who's involved in this particular area of law practice and involvement will in fact know of. And they'd like, I'm sure, to thank Professor Anderson very much for what he's produced, because this is what I would describe very much as a heavyweight work, but it's a very important work because safety, particularly at sea, is a very fundamental requirement because of the nature of the environment itself. This is what we say anyway. Maritime safety is the aim of the ISM Code, that's the International Safety Management Code, which every practitioner involved in shipping matters should know about if they don't already. I'm sure they do. The code came into force in July 1998, hence the first edition at that time, and it occasioned the publication then of it, and we're now of course in the third edition. It was duly noted when the first edition came out that the code was one of the most important developments in maritime safety to be put in place during the decade of the 90s. And of course we all remember the Exxon Valdez disaster of the early 90s and some of the problems that we've had. The code, of course, is now mandatory for almost every commercial vessel in the world. And I think, again, like everything else, we're moving towards very much international agreements on all of these things. There will be rogue states that won't agree, but generally speaking, it's common sense and it makes lives safer and better for all. And that's the basic reason behind why we do this in the first place. Previous attempts, of course, to improve safety and prevent pollution had focused largely on the construction of ships and their equipment. Now the ISM Code, by contrast, concentrates on the way shipping companies and ship operators are run, as many accidents at sea are fundamentally the fault of management. As the ISM Code is basically about good governance, the aim of this book is to help companies achieve increased, or rather total, IMS compliance. So we're very much in the same realm as we are with corporate governance and with a whole range of other things, and that is you've got to have some rules, they've got to be obeyed, and you've got to have the proper compliance throughout. You've got to have the mechanisms to make sure that everything is running properly. And at the end of the day, it makes sense to do it this way. Now, what do we come up with here? The author, Professor Anderson, has been an ISM Code expert witness and or marine consultant in nearly 150 legal cases around the world where compliance was an issue. Some of the cases were criminal prosecutions, others were civil law actions, often resulting from navigational accidents, collisions, personal injuries, pollution incidents and contractual disputes, with subsequent or consequent challenges by insurance companies. So you can see the direct link here between maritime law and Lloyd's itself. Anderson goes on to explain why it is, in the view of the 150 cases he refers to, that so few cases have come before the courts, which is obviously why there is so little case law available in this area. You saw in the book itself there isn't that much case law referred to, but he has picked the really good ones, the juicy ones for you. One reason is that many cases went before an arbitration tribunal. Another is that the the majority were settled out of court. Now the book, of course, provides all the relevant details which shipping lawyers will certainly find enlightening. It covers, for example, the underlying principles of the code itself, the key players and the compliance requirements themselves, together with their legal and insurance implications. Concerning issues which are still the subject of debate, the author has made it clear that the opinions which he believes to be correct are specifically his own. But there again, he's an expert, and he's probably one of the foremost people around with knowledge of this area, so I think it's well worth paying substantial attention to what's being said, if I may say so. The book's been published by Informa Law from Routledge, which is the Taylor and I've forgotten the name offhand. Let's have a look. It's actually it's Taylor and Francis group as well, who oversee all of this. But what we've got here, it's all now part of the Lloyd's Practical Shipping Guide series, and it's written, as I say, by an experienced person who offers a clear and clearly written approach to what is an often complex subject, and he fills, I think, an important gap in the current literature on matters relating to the ISM Code. For shipping lawyers then, and other those professionally involved in matters of maritime security and safety, this book is an important purchase, particularly in its latest edition, in view of the many amendments to the code and other developments that have taken place since the previous book came out in 2005. The publication date, as I've indicated, is 2015. Just have a look at it again. It's from Informa, and get the names right eventually, but Informa Law, Routledge and Taylor and Francis, all a big organisation. There's the spine, then there's the back. You can see some information. Just opening it in the middle, you can see very quickly you've got some rather useful information here, because you've actually got an extract of the code, and then you've got some commentary from it, which again is coming from Anderson, but I think again that's very helpful. This is dealing with the management of risk itself, which I think is also very relevant, and you can see here this is compliance requirements and legal implications. Again, that's the area we're involved in as lawyers, but I found this book extremely helpful. Do have a look at the foreword for the third edition as well, and of course the preface to the third edition too, which sort of recaps a little bit, but what he's trying to do here, he says nearly now 17 years since the first edition and 10 years since the second. So there's a lot of water has passed under the bridge, if I can put it that way, since the book first appeared. Anyway, I'd like to thank all concerned for what is an excellent book and of great help, I think, to anybody involved in this particular area of practice. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.